Arrogant billionaire invites black maid's daughter to play chess as a joke. But she didn't know she was a teen genius. Come here, dear, why don't you show us how you play chess back in your apartment complex? Eleanor Braxton's voice rang with a lazy, cutting drawl through the vast parlor of her grand Atlanta manor. The room, glowing with chandeliers and lined with oil portraits of Braxton ancestors, felt quiet and expectant amusement. 16-year-old Maya Reyes clutched the silver tray in both hands. She'd been helping her mother Rosa serve the guests, politicians, real estate developers, and their well-coiffed spouses, all gathered for Eleanor's charity dinner, allegedly supporting underprivileged youth. The irony wasn't lost on Eleanor. She relished it. Maya froze as all eyes turned her way. Eleanor leaned back in her armchair, fingers drumming on the armrest in mock thoughtfulness. I'm sure she knows at least how to move the pieces, she continued, gesturing to the antique Southern-made chess set that sat on the coffee table, a family heirloom used more for show than play. A hotel magnate nudged his wife. $10 says she doesn't even know how the knight moves, he whispered, his words setting off a ripple of genteel laughter that spread like spilled bourbon across the plush carpet. Rosa felt the heat rise in her face. 20 years scrubbing these floors, patching Maya's uniforms, putting food on their tiny table, and now she had to stand by while her employer used her brilliant, quiet daughter as the night's entertainment. She gripped the tray tighter, the silver biting into her palm. Rosa, Eleanor added with sickly sweetness, her smile all teeth, you may stop serving for now. I want you to watch your daughter play. It'll be educational. For both of you. Rosa swallowed hard, the words sticking in her throat. She met Maya's wide, dark eyes and shook her head slightly, an instinct to protect her. But Maya was already moving, her legs like stone columns, forced forward by the magnetic pull of 100 watching eyes. The room was hushed except for the clinking of ice in crystal tumblers. Somewhere in the corner, a violinist stopped playing mid-bar, sensing the shift in mood. Guests craned their necks, delighted by the cruelty. They loved drama, especially when it cost them nothing. Maya set the tray down on a polished side table, careful not to let it clatter. Her fingers trembled, and she hid them behind her back. She had learned long ago not to show fear in front of people like these. She straightened her spine. Eleanor watched with an approving smirk, pleased at the tension she'd created. That's right, dear, she purred. Come closer. Don't be shy. We're all friends here tonight. Another guest, a local councilman whose campaign Eleanor had funded, raised an eyebrow and chuckled. Nothing like a bit of local color at these events, he drawled, eliciting more thin, conspiratorial laughter. Maya reached the coffee table, her eyes fixed on the gleaming chess pieces. They were carved from ivory and onyx, too beautiful for actual play. She remembered dusting them as a child, Rosa warning her never to break one, or it would take months of wages to pay it back. Eleanor gestured grandly. Sit, she ordered. She herself remained sprawled in her plush chair, legs crossed elegantly, a martini glass balanced in one hand. Maya hesitated. For a moment, the silence threatened to swallow her whole. She felt the weight of her mother's eyes on her back, pleading silently for her to hold her tongue, to not provoke these people. But there was nowhere to go. She sat. A servant, a uniformed man Eleanor called staff instead of by name, hurried over and pulled out the opposite chair for Eleanor. The hostess rose with theatrical reluctance, handing off her drink without looking at the man. She settled across from Maya with a heavy sigh, as if this whole performance were a dreadful inconvenience. Now, Eleanor said, voice pitched to the whole room, let's see what our little scholar can do. Maya, you do know how to set up the board, don't you? Maya nodded once. Her voice felt trapped in her chest. Speak up, dear, Eleanor prompted, smiling. We can't hear you. Yes, ma'am, Maya said, finally finding her voice. It was small but clear. The guests tittered, enjoying the show. Rosa couldn't move from her spot. She felt nailed to the floor, one hand pressed against her chest to steady her pounding heart. Eleanor's green eyes glittered with predatory delight. Good. Let's get started. Remember, everyone, she said, turning to her guests, this is for charity. Polite laughter followed, but it was brittle. Maya began arranging the pieces with deft, careful fingers. She had studied enough to know that even the placement of the pawns mattered. Every move was strategy, and tonight was the most dangerous game of her life. Eleanor feigned boredom, inspecting her manicure. She made eye contact with her friends and rolled her eyes, mouthing, this will be quick. A woman in pearls sipped her wine and smiled back, giving an exaggerated wink. A hush settled as the first moves began. Eleanor played aggressively, slamming her bishop forward early. Maya countered quietly, without looking up. Her face was calm, unreadable, though her heart raced so hard she thought it might burst. The guests clustered in a loose half-circle. Their laughter died to a curious murmur. They weren't sure if they were supposed to be entertained or appalled, but they were watching. That was what mattered. At the back of the room, Rosa willed herself not to cry. She remembered Maya at 7 years old, building chess moves on a torn-up cardboard set they made from cereal boxes. She remembered telling her daughter, "Never let them see you afraid." But fear was everywhere tonight, thick as the perfume hanging in the heated air. "Really, dear," Eleanor said with a sigh, her tone dripping with scorn as she took Maya's knight with her queen. "I thought you said you knew how to play?" Maya's lips tightened. She didn't answer. Instead, she studied the board. Mapped it. The laughter was dying again as guests noticed the board wasn't so simple anymore. Eleanor didn't see it. She was too busy performing for her audience. Rosa closed her eyes and prayed. A low voice in the crowd said, "She's actually not bad." Eleanor's eyes snapped up. "What was that?" she asked, her smile faltering just for a heartbeat. "Oh, nothing," came the polite reply. But the spell was broken. Tension slithered across the room like smoke. Maya shifted in her seat, taking her time, placing her next move with absolute care. Eleanor frowned, realizing too late that she had been playing the girl and not the game. Outside the tall windows, the Atlanta night pressed against the glass, muffling the city's distant noises. But inside the Braxton estate, the air was razor-sharp, silent but for the ticking of the grandfather clock and the rustle of fine fabrics as the guests shifted uncomfortably. Eleanor's fingers drummed faster now, her charm thinning. Maya didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply waited. Rosa watched her daughter's face, so composed, so quiet, and felt a flicker of hope stab through the fear. Maya had always been better at this than anyone knew. Eleanor swallowed, suddenly aware of the watching eyes. And the game went on. The hush was absolute. Maya Reyes sat perfectly still, fingers resting lightly on the edge of the chessboard. The last move had been so quiet, so precise, that at first no one understood what had happened. It was like watching the final drip of ink land on parchment, unassuming, yet final. The old grandfather clock ticked once, twice. "Checkmate," Maya whispered. The word landed like a stone in a pond, rippling outward, swallowing the grand room in silence. Eleanor Braxton didn't move. Her green eyes locked onto the chess pieces, unblinking, as if she could will them to change positions through sheer force of will. The ivory queen, her favorite piece, lay vulnerable, pinned and helpless. A tremor ran through her fingers where they rested on the arm of her carved chair. For a moment, no one breathed. The guests, dressed in shimmering gowns and tailored tuxedos, leaned in, trying to understand. A hush fell over the once boisterous circle. Even the string quartet stopped mid-note, bows frozen on violin strings. Maya's mother, Rosa, stood rooted to the spot near the wall, one hand pressed to her mouth. Tears threatened to spill over her lined cheeks. Her vision blurred. She could barely see the board. But she saw her daughter. Straight-backed. Calm. A single tear escaped Rosa's eye, tracing the map of hard-earned years on her face. Eleanor's lips parted, but no words came out. She lifted her hand slowly and knocked over her own king by accident. The small clatter on the wooden board felt like thunder. Someone in the back whispered, "She's amazing." The voice wasn't mocking. It was odd. It was enough to break the spell. Murmurs rose among the guests, some embarrassed, some shocked, a few grudgingly impressed. "She actually won," a man muttered into his wife's ear. "But how?" she asked, eyes wide. "She set that trap 4 moves ago," another observed. "My God. I didn't even see it." The atmosphere shifted, like a ballroom candle snuffed out all at once. The smug superiority melted away, replaced with uncomfortable realization. Eleanor inhaled sharply, trying to collect herself. Her face flushed a deep, blotchy red. She was the queen of this grand Atlanta manor, the hostess of the evening, the patron of underprivileged youth, and now she sat humiliated before them all by the very girl she had tried to turn into a punchline. She opened her mouth to speak, closed it. Her jaw tensed. Maya didn't gloat. She didn't move a muscle beyond a small exhale. Her eyes were steady, dark and clear. She had nothing left to prove. Rosa let out a tiny, involuntary sob, muffling it quickly with her hand. She couldn't help it. 20 years of scrubbing Eleanor's floors, laundering her linens, keeping her head down while her daughter read second-hand chess books borrowed from the library after her cleaning shift was over. Tonight, for the first time, she didn't feel small. Checkmate, Maya repeated, a little louder, as if reminding everyone of the rules. Eleanor's hand shook as she picked up her martini glass, took a gulp, and found it empty. She set it down with a clunk that made her jump. "Bravo," someone said softly, clapping once before falling silent when no one joined in. The guests shifted uncomfortably. Some couldn't meet Maya's eyes. Others studied her now with new calculation, as if trying to reconcile the girl in the hand-me-down dress and service apron with the mind that had just outmaneuvered Atlanta's most influential hostess. Eleanor cleared her throat. When she finally spoke, her voice was strained but icy. "Well, that was unexpected." She tried to smile, but it looked more like a grimace. Maya blinked once, slowly. She looked at Eleanor as if seeing her for what she was for the first time. Small, petty, insecure behind the velvet drapes and silver candelabras. Rosa finally moved, rushing forward. She set the tray down so hard it rattled. Her eyes were wet but blazing. "Maya," she whispered fiercely. "Stand up." Maya pushed her chair back deliberately. The scraping sound against the polished floor echoed in the room. She rose slowly, gracefully, like royalty in borrowed clothes. The guests parted for her as she walked around the table. Eleanor stood as well, nearly toppling her chair in her haste. She gestured at the board in vague disbelief, as if demanding someone explain how this could have happened in her house. "Wait," she said, voice cracking. "We were just having fun. It was a joke." This was, but no one was laughing. Her friends weren't coming to her rescue this time. Rosa put her arm around her daughter's shoulders and squeezed, breathing in the scent of her hair. Clean from the cheap hotel soap they used, the only one they could afford. Maya's hands were steady now. She held her head high. "Thank you for the game," she said softly to Eleanor. It was polite. It was devastating. Eleanor felt heat flood her face again. She was used to being thanked, obeyed, feared, not beaten, not taught humility. She opened her mouth, closed it. Her teeth ground together audibly. A man at the edge of the group cleared his throat. "Perhaps," he suggested carefully, "it's time we let our hosts have a moment." One by one, the guests turned away, suddenly fascinated by their drinks or the floor or the paintings on the walls. The buzz of chatter resumed, but it was strained, broken into hushes and side glances at Eleanor's burning face. The pianist, who had frozen at the keys, resumed a hesitant tune. But the energy was gone. The charity dinner was over, though no one would say it aloud. Eleanor felt the humiliation like a hot coal pressed to her chest. She swallowed hard, rage simmering under her skin. She turned away from the chessboard with a flick of her wrist, as if it disgusted her. But she couldn't wipe away the memory of that word, spoken twice now. Checkmate. Outside, Atlanta's humid night pressed against the mansion windows. Cicadas sang in the darkness. Inside, Maya walked beside her mother, silent but proud. Rosa didn't look back at Eleanor. She didn't need to. She had seen everything she needed to see tonight. And as they reached the door to the kitchen, Rosa stopped. She turned back just once to watch her employer shudder in fury and defeat. Then she smiled. A small, tired, triumphant smile. Her daughter wasn't invisible anymore. Not tonight. Not ever again. Eleanor Braxton didn't sleep that night. The walls of her grand Atlanta mansion seemed to close in on her, heavy with silence and disapproval. Every antique portrait of an ancestor stared down at her like a judge. She poured herself another glass of wine at 3 in the morning and wandered the cavernous halls barefoot, the cold marble floor biting at her soles. In the dim lamplight, she could see the chessboard in the parlor, still set exactly as it was left. The ivory king lay toppled over, a mute confession of her humiliation. She tried to look away, but her eyes kept finding it, drawn to that fallen piece as if it held the answer to her disgrace. By dawn, the wine was gone, and so was any illusion that she could control what came next. She slumped into her bed without undressing, drifting in and out of restless dreams. When she finally woke, it was nearly noon, and her phone was shrieking with notifications. Bleary-eyed, she grabbed it. Dozens of missed calls. Hundreds of messages. Her head pounded with every buzz. She squinted at the screen and played the first video that popped up. It was filmed from the night before. Shaky footage caught Maya sitting across from her, eyes steady. Eleanor's own voice filled the room, nasal and sharp. "Come here, dear. Show us how you play in the slums." Then the final move. The silence. And Maya's quiet, devastating whisper. "Checkmate." Eleanor felt her stomach twist. She scrolled down. The video had gone viral. Someone had added big, mocking text. Rich woman gets humbled. Other versions circulated with captions like Atlanta socialite tries to humiliate maid's daughter. Gets wrecked. The comments were worse. That poor girl held it together like a queen. Eleanor Braxton, charity queen? More like plantation princess. I hope the maid and her daughter are getting offers from real people. She slammed the phone down so hard it rattled the side table. But it wouldn't stop buzzing. Her lawyer called, his voice the careful tone of someone handling a live grenade. Eleanor, the foundation board is furious. Donations are evaporating. They want a meeting. She snapped, it was a stupid dinner game. He sighed. It's not just that now. The optics are everywhere. They're talking about removing you. She ended the call without saying goodbye. Seconds later, the phone rang again. It was Caroline, her oldest friend. Eleanor felt relief flood her chest for a moment until she heard the tight, panicked voice on the line. Eleanor. Jesus. Have you seen what's online? I've seen it, Eleanor said, voice brittle. Look, I can't be part of this. People are calling me, asking if I was there. Sponsors are threatening to drop my event. I'm sorry, but I have to distance myself. You're abandoning me? There was an awful pause. I'm protecting myself. The call ended. Eleanor let the phone slide from her fingers onto the bedspread. She stared at the ceiling as the tears burned her eyes. She had spent years curating that social circle. Wine tastings, charity auctions, garden parties under fairy lights. All of them united by a silent agreement to pretend they were generous, refined, enlightened. Now they were vanishing like smoke. She got up and wandered into the bathroom. Her reflection startled her. Her hair was tangled, makeup smudged, eyes red and swollen. She didn't look like Atlanta's reigning society queen. She looked ruined. She splashed water on her face, trying to calm her ragged breathing, but there was no calming it. She felt hunted. Hours passed. She didn't eat. She couldn't even sip the coffee she brewed. She just scrolled and scrolled, watching herself go viral over and over. Her cruel words replayed endlessly, her smirk dissected by thousands of strangers. One TikTok had set her voice to circus music. Another had Maya's calm face in slow motion as the checkmate landed. Text reading, "This is what real grace looks like." She saw calls to boycott her charity. Screenshots of people withdrawing monthly donations. Angry tweets demanding to know how many other kids she had humiliated for fun. She felt sick. Her foundation's accountant emailed her that major sponsors were pulling out. Her event planner texted, "Don't bother sending a deposit for next month. We're canceling." The final blow was a carefully worded email from the foundation board itself. "We believe it would be best if you resign to limit further damage." She stared at the words for a long time. The phone slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. Outside, the Atlanta afternoon buzzed with cicadas. The world went on without her. She wandered the empty rooms of her mansion, trailing her fingers along the polished banisters she had once bragged were hand-carved. The place felt cold, lifeless. No staff lingered today. They'd been given time off after the incident, the coordinator had told her delicately. No friends called to check if she was okay. Even the house itself seemed to recoil from her. She found herself in the parlor again. The chessboard was waiting. The ivory king still lay defeated, surrounded by silent onlookers carved in onyx and bone. She bent down and righted the fallen king with shaking hands. It didn't matter. The loss was recorded forever. Not just the game, but what it revealed. She heard her own voice echo in her head, cruel and dismissive. "It'll be educational. For both of you." It had been. She collapsed onto the nearest sofa, face in her hands. Tears leaked through her fingers. Not the polite, controlled tears she knew how to summon at charity events when she wanted a photo op. These were hot, ugly, snotty sobs that made her shoulders shake. She saw Maya's face in her mind's eye. Calm, unafraid. She remembered Rosa's tears. She remembered the hush that had fallen, that heavy silence when the room realized exactly who Eleanor Braxton was. A woman who used charity as a stage to perform her superiority. A woman who didn't see a teenage girl, only a prop for her own self-importance. She had lost everything that really mattered. Respect, dignity, the illusion that she was a good person. Outside, the summer sun lowered behind the magnolia trees. Shadows lengthened over the Braxton estate, filling every room with dim light. She wiped her eyes, trying to steady her breathing, but nothing felt steady anymore. She was alone. Completely, finally, humiliatingly alone. And for the first time in her life, Eleanor Braxton understood exactly how small she really was. The morning after the charity dinner felt like waking up in another life. Maya Reyes blinked at the thin gray light filtering through the faded curtains of the servants' quarters. She could hear the muffled sounds of Atlanta waking up beyond the tall iron gates of the estate, cars rumbling, birds trilling in the magnolia trees. But inside the small room she shared with her mother, there was only quiet. Rosa lay on the narrow cot nearby, her hair unpinned and wild, face turned toward the wall. Maya watched her for a moment, the way her shoulders lifted and fell in slow, exhausted sleep. She didn't want to wake her yet. Maya swung her legs over the side of the bed and stared at her hands. She turned them over, palms up, as if they might hold the answer to what she had done. Checkmate. She whispered it soundlessly, remembering the hush that had followed in that grand room, the way every polished guest had fallen silent, remembering Eleanor's red, furious face. She felt a strange flutter in her chest, not exactly triumph. Something sharper. Something that made her want to laugh and cry at the same time. Before she could stand, Rosa stirred. She blinked, confusion giving way to memory. Their eyes met. For a moment neither of them spoke. Then Rosa pushed herself up slowly, wincing as her back cracked. "Good morning, Mija," she murmured, voice hoarse. Maya swallowed. "Morning, Mama." They sat there in silence. The servants' quarters smelled faintly of bleach and old furniture. Rosa rubbed her eyes and sighed. "We should get ready. She'll want the parlor cleaned up after last night." But there was a tremor in her voice. Before Maya could answer, Rosa's old phone buzzed angrily on the crate they used for a table. She frowned, picking it up. Her brow furrowed deeper as she read the screen. It was buzzing with notifications. Calls from numbers she didn't recognize. A message from Maribel, an old friend who worked at a nonprofit downtown. Rosa squinted and put it on speaker. "Rosa," Maribel's voice crackled. "You need to see this." "See what?" Rosa asked warily. "The video. Maya's video. It's everywhere." Maya's stomach dropped. Rosa shot her a confused, frightened look. "What video?" Maribel sounded breathless. "The chess game. Someone filmed it. It's all over social media. News stations are picking it up. Rosa, people are talking about Maya. She's famous." Maya felt her heart start to pound. She pressed a hand over her chest as if to calm it. Rosa's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Maribel was still talking. "They're saying she's a genius. A prodigy. People are calling the foundation asking for her. Rosa, she's everywhere." When the call ended, silence filled the little room again. Rosa sat heavily on the edge of her cot, the phone slipping from her fingers onto the worn rug. She covered her mouth with both hands. Maya's breath came in ragged bursts. "Famous," she managed. Rosa just shook her head, as if she didn't believe it herself. Minutes later, the phone buzzed again. A voicemail. Rosa hesitated before pressing play. "Good morning, Ms. Reyes. This is Dr. Harris, admissions director at Emory University. We saw your daughter's story. Her poise and skill are extraordinary. We'd like to discuss a full scholarship, tuition, room, board, everything. Please call us back." The words seemed to hang in the air like incense smoke. Rosa's eyes brimmed over. She turned to Maya and reached out blindly, pulling her into a shaking embrace. Maya buried her face in her mother's shoulder. Neither of them spoke. There were no words for that moment. Later that day, the calls kept coming. Local news. National news. Nonprofits. Sponsors. People who had never given Rosa or Maya a second glance now wanted to know them. Praise flooded in, drowning out the jeers from the night before. A journalist from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution came to the gate, waving press credentials. Rosa refused at first, terrified it was a trick. But Maya took her mother's hand, voice steady. "We can tell our side," she whispered. That night, the two of them watched the segment on a tiny TV they'd bought secondhand. Maya's face filled the screen. Calm, composed. Not the servant's daughter. Not the entertainment for rich guests. The anchor called her Atlanta's unexpected chess prodigy and an inspiring story of grace under pressure. Rosa cried the entire time. The offers didn't stop. Days later, they sat in a tidy office in the heart of the city. The walls were lined with photos of children smiling with new backpacks, mothers holding certificates of training. The nonprofit director smiled kindly across the desk. "Rosa, we've seen you work for years. You're smart, dependable, strong. We'd like you to join us as an administrative assistant. Regular hours. Benefits. Paid holidays." Rosa blinked. Her lower lip trembled. She turned to Maya helplessly. Maya squeezed her hand. "Say yes, Mama." Rosa swallowed hard. Yes, she whispered. Then louder. Yes. Thank you. When they left the building, Rosa clutched the job offer letter to her chest like it was made of gold. They didn't go back to the mansion. Instead, they met with a soft-spoken apartment manager who had seen the news and offered them a discount on a small 2-bedroom unit over in Grant Park. It had scuffed floors and a chipped bathtub, but sunlight poured through the big front windows, warming the old wood. Maya stood in the middle of the empty living room, breathing it in. It's ours, Rosa said softly. Maya turned. Rosa was crying again, but smiling this time. They moved in with what little they owned. A battered kettle. A couple of suitcases. A second-hand lamp. The first night there, they ate takeout Chinese on the floor. Maya insisted on using the chopsticks, making Rosa laugh until she snorted tea out her nose. Later, they lay in their separate beds. No more cramped cot, no more sharing. Maya stared at the cracked ceiling, her mind buzzing with plans. Classes, matches, a future. She heard Rosa sigh in the other room. Te amo, Mija, her mother called softly. Te amo, mama, Maya whispered back, tears slipping quietly onto her pillow. Outside their window, Atlanta hummed with life. Cars, music, the hush of trees in the warm breeze. Inside, for the first time, there was peace. They were home, their own home. And for Maya, it was only the beginning. The late afternoon light spilled through the tall arched windows of the old Atlanta library, warm and dappled, catching floating specks of dust in its gentle glow. Shelves lined with battered books cast long shadows on the scuffed wooden floor. In a quiet corner, Maya Reyes sat at a wide, heavy table surrounded by 3 eager children. Her fingers rested lightly on the chessboard in front of them. She studied their faces, the boy with the wide eyes, the 2 girls bouncing in their chairs. Remember, she said softly, you don't just think about your move. You think about theirs too. What are they planning? One of the girls bit her lip in concentration, staring at her pieces as though they might whisper secrets. The boy finally moved his knight with exaggerated care, setting it down with a small, satisfied huff. Maya smiled. Good. That's better. See how much more space he controls now. The children beamed. They were bright and full of life, laughing every time she teased them about their moves, leaning in eagerly when she praised them. This library had once been her refuge. She'd spend hours here in the hushed aisles, poring over old chess books that smelled of mildew and secrets. She'd memorized openings and famous endgames at tables just like this one, while her mother scrubbed floors across town. Now she returned not as the quiet, unseen girl afraid to ask questions, but as someone to guide them. When the lesson ended, the kids scattered off to the children's section, giggling, promising they'd practice. Maya watched them go, heart-tugging in a way that felt both heavy and buoyant at once. She turned and found her mother sitting nearby, purse clutched in her lap, watching with shining eyes. Rosa's hair was pinned neatly, and she wore a simple blue blouse that she had chosen carefully for today. She'd taken time off from her new job at the nonprofit, an understanding boss had insisted she go. Maya walked over and sat beside her. For a moment, neither spoke. They just listened to the muffled quiet of the library, the rustle of turning pages, the squeak of old chairs. Finally, Maya turned to her. Thank you, Mama. Rosa blinked at her. For what? For believing in me, Maya said, voice low but firm. When no one else did. Even when it seemed crazy. Even when I didn't believe in myself. Rosa swallowed, eyes filling. She reached out and took Maya's hand between both of hers. Her fingers were still rough from years of cleaning, even though she now sat behind a desk, filing papers and answering calls. I always knew you were meant for more, Rosa whispered. Maya felt her throat tighten. She pressed her lips together, blinking back tears that threatened to spill. Rosa squeezed her hand. I used to watch you at that old table, she went on. You didn't see me, but I'd come in sometimes. I'd see your hair falling over your face while you read those books like they were the only things keeping you alive. I wanted to drag you home to rest, but I couldn't make myself do it. I thought, if this is what she needs, who am I to take it from her? Maya let out a watery laugh. I thought I was hiding it so well. Rosa shook her head with a small smile. You were terrible at hiding it. They both laughed, the sound catching in their throats, cracking with relief and memory. The librarian, an elderly man with white hair and deep smile lines, nodded to them from his desk. He remembered Maya well. The quiet, determined girl who would check out every chess book they had, some of them so old their spines crumbled. He watched her now with calm satisfaction, grateful to see her giving back. When the sun had drifted lower, throwing long orange bars of light across the floor, Maya finally stood. She smoothed her skirt, brushing invisible lint away. "Ready?" she asked. Rosa rose more slowly, knees creaking, but her head high. "Ready." They walked out together. Outside, Atlanta hummed in the warm air. Cars rumbled past on cracked asphalt. Children shouted in nearby yards. Music spilled from a shop's open door. They walked slowly along the sidewalk. Maya watched the light catch on her mother's silver earrings, the ones Rosa had bought second-hand but wore with quiet pride. Every so often someone passing by would glance at Maya with recognition. A bus driver called out, "Hey, you're the chess girl." She waved back shyly. But it wasn't fame that made her heart swell. It was the feeling of place, of belonging. They didn't have to go back to the servant's entrance of any mansion tonight. They would ride the bus home to their small apartment, eat leftover stew, maybe watch the news on the old TV where her face had appeared once or twice, talking about her scholarship, about her plans. It was enough. Elsewhere in the city, Eleanor Braxton sat alone in her large, echoing living room. The elegant drapes were drawn against the evening glare, casting the room in deep shade. She sat stiffly in her high-backed chair, ankles crossed tightly. On the TV before her, muted but clear, footage played of Maya in the library. The girl's face was calm, sure of itself in a way that stung Eleanor's chest. She watched Maya lean over the chessboard with those kids, smile warm, eyes kind. A reporter's voice droned from the closed captions at the bottom of the screen. A local scholarship recipient gives back to the community, teaching the game that changed her life. Eleanor pressed her lips together until they went white. Her eyes burned. She blinked hard, willing the tears to stay put. But they fell anyway. She wiped them with the heel of her hand, angry with herself. She remembered the night she'd thought it would be funny. Thought she was so clever. She saw Rosa's face behind her eyelids, tearful but proud. She saw Maya saying thank you to her mother. The shame settled in Eleanor's chest like a stone. All her parties, all her charity speeches, all her careful social climbing. It hadn't made her kind. It hadn't made her wise. It hadn't made her worthy. Because worth wasn't measured in money or reputation. It was measured in moments like these, a girl thanking her mother, a teacher leaning over a chessboard, a woman learning too late how small she'd really been. Outside, the city was alive with possibility. And somewhere in it, Maya Reyes walked beside her mother, head high, eyes forward, a quiet, hopeful smile curving her lips as they made their way home. She had everything she needed. She was exactly where she belonged. And she was just getting started. If you enjoyed Maya and Rosa's journey, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell us what you think about how their story ended. Rate it on a scale of 10 and share where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Maya, Rosa, and Eleanor's powerful lesson.